Hey, what's up guys? NPC here. With Binah coming back, let's do an updated tier list based on new characters we've received. I'll be going over characters such as the twins, Chirino, and maybe giving you a quick refresher on everything else, or all the other characters in the previous list. If you like what you see here, please click the red button down below. Thanks a lot, and let's get into it. So like the other lists, we're going to ignore characters that don't really matter in the raid. I'm only going to specify mostly the penetration characters and maybe an off character here and there, and obviously some of the supports. Starting off, let's go with Maki. She does too much damage, right? Not only does her affinity align with the raid, her skill kit is basically meant for this boss. Binah has pretty high defense, so having the normal skill on Maki leveled up to at least probably 7 will be really strong. Ideally, you leave her at 4 until you can get to 7, and then you can go like slowly increasing it from there, but I would try to go for 10 if you can. After that, her attack speed and her passive skill and her sub skill are pretty similar. I like her sub skill a bit more just because this is just more damage while this makes her attack faster. And for her EX skill, go for probably EX3 minimum. 5 if you can, but anything above 3 is kind of expensive, so shoot for at least 3. Next up, let's talk about who's really strong. We can go Iori. Iori is difficult for me because she's not better than Maki. Just because of affinities, right? Iori just does not like this area. She's gonna do less damage than Maki, guaranteed. So the thing about Iori is, she's just pure damage, and if you're gonna use her in total assault, you really want to just level her EX skill, her normal skill, and her sub skill. The passive skill doesn't really affect PvE fights, so you can kind of ignore this unless you care about PvP. So focus on those 3 abilities before you touch the passive skill. Next up, let's do Kotama. She's another S tier, obviously better than Iori, just because Iori is going to be weaker. Kotama is essential for getting EX clears, and her attack buffs also make it so that you're able to clear really fast. Her sub skill increases your party's attack, and her party attack buff makes it so that you essentially just do way more damage than you really need to. Make sure to focus on the EX skill first, and if you have a 3-star Kotama, do her passive skill after that. No, her sub skill, not passive. Next up, let's talk Chirino. Where is she? Where's Mustache Lady? Where is she? Oh, there she is. I think she's S tier in this raid, specifically because of her normal skill buff actually, and her sub skill. But let's talk about her normal skill more. This skill increases the chance that you crit your opponent. So if you have this debuff up, while you have, let's say, a defense down, and then you hit them with like a Maki EX skill, you have a high chance of critting, making it so that your fights are pretty consistent. That combined with her sub skill, increasing your recovery cost, you can cast pretty often, and I think she's one of the cores for Binah. Also, her affinity aligns with it, so even if her damage isn't that great, she'll at least deal some damage, right? Let's do Nonomi. Nonomi, she's a little weak. Her EX skill doesn't really line up with these kind of fights, so I would probably put her in A tier, just because her damage is actually not that bad. Let's go check her out real quick. Nonomi, there we go. Yeah, so her normal attacks actually increase her attack, which is nice. Oh, this is just a buff. What was wrong with me? And this gives her extra damage. Like, all this increases her damage, which is really nice. Especially this one, just giving her flat damage. So she's a pretty good just base attacker, and her affinity aligns with the map. So Nonomi is pretty... Think of her like Serika, probably. You would probably just use her like that. But the thing is, she won't be used to cycle. She'll just be there, hitting her, like just shooting her gun, you know, doing whatever. You leave her there, ignore her. Kind of like a Pina, except Pina has a good EX skill. I guess speaking of Pina, I don't know if I want to put her... Honestly though, she's probably an S tier. I would say so. Let's go check out her skill kit real quick just to make sure. So Pina is neutral in the map, which means she's not gonna be that strong, but this EX skill is really good. She also is pretty self-sufficient, so if you run like a zero healer comp, like no Serina, having Pina there is really nice just because she won't die. This only happens once per battle, but this should be good enough. And you definitely want her 3-star if you're going to use her, just because of this attack speed buff. I would probably level up this ability first, and then probably focus on this one second. But EX skill 100% takes priority. This skill is too good. If you can't get to 5, leave it at 3 in my opinion. Just because there's, like, the difference is just attack, and I would prefer if you can get this ignore attack delay. So Pina's probably up here. Kotama. Yeah, Kotama's better than Chirino. Pina, I think Chirino's a little better. I like Chirino's debuff a lot more. Kane, 100% S tier. She's like around here. Better than Kotama? Yeah, probably. I would say so. So Akane is one of your core defense reduction characters. She's not really there to do damage, so you can kind of ignore most of these abilities. Maybe you can pay attention to her normal skill just because this is just a free nuke. This is her main skill. You basically want to invest as much as you can into this, and leave it at 3 unless you can afford 10, or 5. Other than that, make sure to always buy her shards. She's probably one of the best characters to have just as a pocket, oh I need defense reduction, you know? She's also very useful in Hero if you guys used her. Next up, let's go Yuzu. Yuzu, I would say she's like a B tier. Now, she is neutral in the map, which is generally okay, but her kit is just like AoE nukes, and this EX skill is also an AoE. The damage is okay, but this is just a single hit. This one is also okay, but it's a single hit on 25-second cooldown, and the damage isn't that high. Also, her last skill just increases her crit damage, so she has pretty good synergy with Chirino. But I don't know if I would use her over like Pina. I guess if I had her and I didn't have 3-star Pina, I would use her. But outside of that, I don't know if I would. Maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe I'll give her an A tier then. Actually, yeah, I think A tier is fine. Oh, next up, let's talk Hisumi. Personally, don't use her. Don't use her. She has her uses. She's not there for damage. I would say she's just there if you struggle in the fight. So, the thing about Hifumi is her damage is pretty bad, but her Peroro summon kind of tanks for you, so you can use her to eat the boss damage, but that's essentially it. And I kind of don't like spending 4 costs just to do that, when I can just heal my characters instead, you know? Do we need to look at her skills? Probably not. It's not that interesting. I guess she does help you increase your cost recovery, which is nice. But spending 4 costs to do essentially nothing but, like, slap the boss? Not worth it. Just for a little cost recovery? Definitely not worth it. Speaking of 4 costs that pretty much just help you tank the boss easier, Tsubaki. I would actually put her at A tier. Just because if you really need the damage reduction, or just someone to tank it, Tsubaki is really strong. She's probably better in phase 3 of the fight, where the damage gets really insane. But outside, like, phase 1 and 2 aren't too difficult, so I don't think you need to bring Tsubaki to phase 1 and 2. But if you struggle finishing off the boss, and you're at the last phase where he just does like sand tsunamis over and over again, using Tsubaki is actually not a bad idea. Next up, let's go with Karen. Where's Karen? There she is. I would say she's like around here. Maybe, yeah, a little bit better than Chirino. Yeah. So Karen is essentially just a click him and nuke it kind of character. Her EX skill is really strong, especially because, well, if the enemy is colossal size, deal additional damage. So having this as high as possible is really nice. And she also just hits them every 40 seconds. So that's extra free damage. And her passive skill is really nice. I don't believe this ability stacks with Kotama though, because they're both attack buffs on the sub skill. So you should just keep that in mind. But Karen's really strong. Definitely use her. Also, she aligns with the terrain. Now let's talk about some of the weird characters. Let's start with Azusa. I would say she's like somewhere around A or B, probably A. And that's only because she has a defense down on skill 1, or on her normal skill. Let's go look at her. So this skill doesn't stack with, what's her name? Maki? But if you can't kill Binah in one team, having Azusa as your second character for defense reduction is nice to have. She's not going to be doing too much damage, but you can use her just for this defense reduction to make your main DPS, let's say like an Iori killer, you know? So Azusa, I would say A, maybe like low A. She's really just a defense reduction. You don't think of her as anything else. Alright, don't even bother using her yet. I guess you could use her EX skill, but I personally wouldn't. Next up, let's talk about Momoi, one of the first twins. I would say she is probably around here. Actually, no, yeah. Iori's definitely better. Probably like A tier. Momoi is she is strong, but her EX skill makes it so that she's not that desirable in my opinion. This damage is okay and the burn is nice, but her normal skill is kind of pointless. All you're really having her for is just basic attacks with her passive and sub skill. Like this skill is really strong, but you kind of want Midori in your team if you're running her. But at the same time, I feel like Midori kind of fills this team differently. I'll kind of explain it probably in another video, like a team idea that I have in my head. I don't think Midori is that great. She's probably just an auto attacker, kind of like Nonomi, but I think Nonomi's better actually. She's probably around here. Unless for some reason you're running Midori in your team, then she might be a little bit better than Nonomi. It's not a big difference. She's really just an auto attacker. Maybe you can throw EX skills. The damage isn't too bad, but personally, I would just use it to just waste it and get another ability if you really have to. Alright, let's talk Hasumi. Oh, I like Hasumi. I think she's probably around here. Probably like here. Better than... I would say so, yeah. So Hasumi being a free character, she's kind of ignored, right? But her skill kit is really strong actually if you take a look at it. She has a lot of ways just to do critical damage and increase her crit rate. This is kind of okay. This kind of makes her damage consistency a little bit better. And she gets a huge crit damage bonus off of her passive skill. What's wrong with me today? Her normal skill is also kind of interesting. This doesn't work in PV or in Binah, but this is a pretty decent skill in my opinion. I could see this being very useful in PvE. But what takes the cake is this skill actually hits really, really hard, especially if you consider how much crit damage she gets. She gets the hat, the watch. You throw in like a Hibiki or something, she can do a lot of damage. And well, when unique weapons come around, check out this extra crit damage she gets for no reason, And she's free. If you farm her now and max her out by the time unique weapons come around, you're gonna be doing crazy amounts of damage with Hasumi. So, definitely an S tier. Not that I think many people have her invested, but I think she's a sleeper pick. let's just fill out the S tiers. Let's talk about Midori at this point. Midori is 100% S tier. She has a free heal, and this extra damage is really nice. You hit the boss 5 times for about like 600 to 1000% damage, plus this poison. It's really nice. And she also gets a pretty decent attack rate and crit rate. The important thing about Midori is this heal makes it so that you don't actually need Chirino. You could probably get away with not using her. Her auto heals are really nice, but let's say you run like a Midori with Binah. You essentially don't need to heal Binah, and then you just have to worry about everyone else. Like Maki, let's say Maki Akane. Do you really think they're gonna die? Maybe Akane could get hit, but then Midori will heal Akane. And I don't think Maki gets hit that often. Binah, well, you can ignore her, right? She'll heal herself, whatever. And while you can't really control the AI, but let's put her in her correct position, like right here. I would say Midori is definitely a very useful character to have. If you don't have her though, having Chirino is good enough. Like, you don't need extra heals. One of these is probably enough. I would say though, if you're running Midori, having a side healer is probably nice just for safety reasons, maybe like a Hanae. I guess speaking of Hanae, she's a very good healer. Her crit damage buff makes it really useful, so let's throw her like here. Junko, probably around here. Mainly an auto attacker, but she doesn't die, so she gets a big plus from me. She has like an immortality skill, even though she kind of nukes her abilities or nukes her health whenever she uses her EX ability. She's still a pretty good character. Junko can deal a ton of damage, so don't sleep on her. Next up, let's talk about Neru. I think Neru is also an S tier in this raid. She's really strong in this raid, probably better than Iori, to be fair. Again, affinity, right? The thing about Neru is she's got a charm as her third slot, so her damage isn't that crazy, but she gets a lot of damage multipliers, especially when she's angered, making her EX skill deal a ton of damage. And she also gets a buff when she's angered, so it kind of makes up for her lack of crit damage. The thing is, Neru is really cheap, so you can use her to cycle a lot. Let's say you throw like Neru and then you roll into like a Chirino or something. You're essentially almost back towards your main DPS combo, which is probably just Akane, Maki, or like, no, it's Akane, Kotama, Maki, right? Defense down, wait for Maki's defense reduction, buff them with Kotama, and then just nuke with Maki. Very good character, very useful, kind of like a Shiroko in a way. I don't know if you guys used her in Hero, but very similar. Except I think Maki is just, or not, I think Neru is just a lot stronger. Why did I say Maki though? Maki? Oh man. So I guess let's talk more tanks. Hoshino, kind of the same as, what's her name? Person that doesn't die. Kind of same as Binah, except she's weak because she's a tank. I would put her around here, because she also just heals herself and she doesn't die. She's probably best at last phase, like as a character where you just tank the boss and let her just eat the damage while you try to kill the boss. Karen can also be used as like a last resort kind of character. So if you have her, and ideally I like to do like Shun plus Karen and then just get a Karen turn 1 and throw it and hope the boss dies if the boss is low enough health. Generally around like 200k health or something like that. Sumire, I would say near Hifumi tier, except I think she's probably a little bit better. She's better than Hifumi for sure. I don't know if I would say, maybe I bring Azusa down here and say she's like here. Well, actually no, Azusa has more usefulness though. Sumire is kind of just a tank, but she'll probably die. Her EX skill is strong and all that, but there's honestly better characters than Sumire, which sucks because I love Sumire. Sumire is such a cool character. But yeah, I don't think she's that great in Binah. She's way better in Chase though. She's actually a really good Chase character. Tsurugi is kind of around here too. Probably better than Yuzu for sure. She's okay though. I'm gonna double check Tsurugi's affinities before I make my final judgment, because I don't remember it. Oh, she's neutral. Okay. Yeah, this skill is really cool and all, but she's kind of slow, and you kind of need this. But then there's no extra enemies, so she can't actually reload and spam her EX skill that often. So she's actually a little weak. Probably around, probably like here. Maybe high B. I would say high B. Almost A. It's just that Azusa has the usefulness, like utility that's useful, so kind of beats her out a little bit. Hibiki is just S tier mainly because of her passive. Crit damage is always just free damage, so there's nothing wrong. Like, if you're not running Hanae, having Hibiki is better, right? Shun, I would say, kind of similar to Azusa. They're just like nice utility characters. She gives you a defense reduction, she just gives you cost so you can nuke faster. Generally, you use Shun right at the end when the boss is almost dead and you have no one else and you're just desperate to kill the boss. So you just throw in like some kind of like weird yellow DPS, get their EX skill, press it because Shun gives you the cost for it, and hope they die. Fuka is okay. I don't really like Fuka's healing, but I would probably give her right here an A tier just because the defense is nice, especially if you guys plan on doing extreme mode. You'd notice that Binah actually does a ton of damage in extreme. So having Fuka is okay for the defense, but I would prefer a Hanae a bit more. But Fuka, she's okay. I don't like using her though. I feel like her EX skill makes it so that you lose a lot of damage. So generally, I don't like using Fuka. But if you need the healing or you need the damage reduction, Fuka's not bad. Same with Serena. Healing isn't vital in Binah. She is still a very good healer, but I'd probably use her above Tsubaki. Yeah, she's probably around here. I wouldn't say she's S just because she's not necessary. Like if you ran Hanae Midori, you don't need Serena. You have enough healing. Right? It just comes down to if you're running Midori or not. If you're not running Midori, Serena is probably up here. But if you are running Midori, Serena is probably not as big of a priority as you need, or as you would think. Now I don't know if Koharu will come out, but if she is out, I would say Koharu is probably an S tier. The thing is, all she really does is heal. She's not gonna do anything else besides heal. So she's kind of just a striker Serena. But the nice part is, running Koharu, you can run like Kotama Hibiki, right? So you get that attack buff from Kotama, and then you run Hibiki for the crit damage. But I think if you do this, you kind of you'd probably run something like a Maki, Akane, Chirino. Yeah, that seems fine actually. That actually seems pretty nice. But the cost might be kind of difficult. Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. Go over, let's see, any of the last characters I forgot. Okay, next we have Utaha. Personally, kind of Hibiki tier. Or Hifumi tier, except I think she's worse than Hifumi. Just because at least Hifumi does damage and doesn't summon a useless turret that can probably get one shot. Well, the turret isn't necessarily useless, it's just that you will have to invest a lot into her in order to get use out of that turret. So I don't think it's that worth it, to be fair. Yoshimi is probably just a little bit better. Probably like right here. She's gonna be like your last resort nuke. She's not bad, but her damage isn't amazing at all. So maybe around here seems more fair. Because Tsurugi actually does decent damage too. Hanako and Akane are solid healers. I would actually use them over Fuka. Actually, I would use Fuka over Akane. I think they're interchangeable. I like Hanako a lot more than these two, but I think these two healers are kind of interchangeable. I would, because I hate Fuka all the time, or I hate on Fuka all the time, well, I'll give her a higher tier this time. Chinatsu is a great burst healer, but overall, not that great for this fight. But, sometimes you need that burst heal. So I'll put her around here. Probably around here. She's a really good healer. Actually, I would use Chinatsu over Hanako, just because Hanako's cheap, or a bit more expensive. And that's my list. If there's anyone I missed, or anyone you are curious about, feel free to ask in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. I'm NPC. See you in the next one. Bye.